debate edition tonight. Thank you all very much for your contributions and comments here. Linda, Peter, sorry, Paul, sorry, Peter's gone now. Leo, Linda, Paul, thank you very much. Big show. We'll be back tomorrow from 9 o'clock on Alex Armstrong Tonight. Until then, I will see you very soon.
Thank you, Alex. We've got another exclusive for you this evening from the only journalist that was given an advanced copy of Virginia Giuffre's book. We're also going to be looking at the protests in America today and also, of course, in the UK. Big protest in London all about digital ID. Is the momentum on that continuing? That and a lot more from Washington.
There's 2 weeks remaining in our latest, greatest giveaway. You could be in the driving seat of this Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxurious home from home comes with all the mod cons. Plus, you can use it with your current driving licence. We'll also boost your bank account with a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. It only takes one entry to become a winner. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News. No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits.
You had the
power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. This is GB News. Up next, it's The Late Show Live with superstar Bev Turner from Washington, D.C. Bev.
Evening, Alex. I don't know about the superstar bit, but look, I'm honoured to be here, of course, as you know. I'm loving being in Washington, D.C. It means we can bring you a very different take on the news at this time of the night, because we're looking at all the stories over here which affect the UK. And there's been two big protests today, one here in America and one in London. And as I said already, I'm a little bit cross with you for not going to cover the digital ID protest in London. You are in my bad books about that, Alex. But I think Prince Andrew took precedent, didn't he?
Well, he did. He stole my show from me, Bev. I was really gearing up to go all in on digital ID, which I think is one of the most tyrannical, evil things to ever grace a politician's desk in our country. The fact that the Prime Minister's considering, I think, says a lot about our government right now. But of course, Prince Andrew stole my camera, quite literally. Yeah. So we had to stop that. But you know, Bev, I think it's important that you're covering it, because if we don't talk about these things, Britain will sleepwalk into it.
Exactly. So I will be talking about it. And we know that GB News viewers feel really strongly about this, and also the Prince Andrew story, because I am going to have the journalist who's got the exclusive look at the book with me again in the studio tonight. So you're forgiven, Alex. I'll let you go home now.
Thanks, Bev.
This is The Late Show Live from Washington, D.C. The Late Show Live tonight.
What's going on? The march is going on.
Power to the people.
Everyone, power to the people.
Power to the people.
There we go. Lots of people from everywhere. Go on. No digital ID. How you doing?
Power to the people. Thousands of protesters marched through central London today to oppose the government's plans for mandatory digital ID. But it's not just Britain that's been rocked by protests today.
I think that the state of the world that we are in right now is really horrible. I want my rights back. I'm off. I need Trump out of office. And yeah, no kings. That. But yeah.
I'm not sure what rights she thinks she's lost, but millions have taken to the streets here in America. Over 2,000 separate gatherings were organised under the banner of No Kings as people push back against, well, what exactly? Donald Trump, yes, but why? Let's look into it. Also tonight.
So we're going to have some stories there about the settlement that she came to reach with Prince Andrew, and why things were looking so bad for him that he was forced to settle. He wanted to fight on it and clear his name, but actually things were looking so bad. It would have dragged members of his family into court for depositions. It was that bad.
So last night we exclusively gave you a first look at the blackmail allegations inside Virginia Giuffre's unreleased memoir. Tonight, part two, with fresh details on the deal to keep her silent for the sake of the late Queen. Also tonight.
Will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burka?
So Reform's Sarah Pochin can now add Portugal to that list. They're about to outlaw burqas and niqabs in most public spaces, raising big questions for Britain and, of course, also America. Should face veils be banned here too? We're going to be looking at the headlines in the UK and those here in America, which affect you at home. And yes, we are live in Washington, just yards from the White House, bringing you the stories that America is talking about, including this.
Now, we'll say thank you to Trump for bringing these National Guards and doing what they're doing down here in Memphis right now.
Fired for praising President Trump's crime crackdown. Tonight, I'm going to speak to that woman who's making headlines across America after refusing to bow down to the anti-Trump bosses in the media. And I know you're going to love the story of people on the streets of London being spray painted in the face.
You know what's going to happen, right? No, not running, no running, no running.
I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live, and our night's just getting started. So today, protests have rocked both sides of the Atlantic. In London, thousands took to the streets against the government's plan for digital ID. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C. and in lots of other states across America, the so-called No Kings protests happen. They're accusing President Trump of behaving like a monarch and a dictator. But here's the irony, of course. Trump gets called a dictator for cutting through the bureaucracy and actually getting things done. Meanwhile, in Britain, it's the exact opposite. Endless bureaucracy, endless red tape, endless legislation, and nothing actually working. And it could even be argued that the implementation of digital IDs, with the implementation of digital IDs, the UK is the one becoming more authoritarian. And if you think that's just my opinion, Liz Truss told me last night exactly how broken Britain is. What I notice here is Trump has this clear ideology, America first. It underpins all of his decisions. I can't imagine a Prime Minister in the UK. And to be fair, you were the closest that came to that. You had a really clear vision.
I tried to do that. I tried to turn Britain around. I knew it was going in the wrong direction. But the reason is, you know, and it goes back to the Cameron era, the modernisers, you know, people like Michael Gove, Francis Maud, all these people, they wanted to be the heir to Blair.
Yeah.
They didn't actually want to change any of this stuff. Do you remember that they called Blair the master?
Yeah.
And the problem is those people still held a lot of power in the Conservative Party, and they stopped.
Is Blair still running the country?
Well, I think he is the last Prime Minister that was actually running Britain.
So if there's one lesson from today's protests, it's this. One side fears too much power, the other fears losing the little freedom that we've got left. To discuss this in more detail, I'm delighted to be joined by the panel of political analyst Eric Ham, who was at today's No Kings protest, political commentator Hilary Fordwich, and also campaigner and activist Fiona Rose Diamond, who organised today's digital ID protest. A very good evening to all of you. Fiona, let me start with you in London. Why, very simply, did you feel the need to galvanise such a large group of people today?
I think the imposition of digital ID, I don't think it's what people have been led to believe that it is, a simple identification on your phone. It simply isn't. It's already actually de facto in place already with the one, sorry, I'm so tired. It's midnight here and I've done this all day and I'm super tired, but the one login is already digital ID. The Gov UK wallet has been rolled out. Now it's the veterans card is being trialled. Very soon will be the digital driver's license. And what they want, the control that they want is just that. It's simply for control and surveillance. It's not to deal with mass illegal migration. They've given no evidence whatsoever to substantiate that and to tell us really if it's going to affect it at all. It will not. They want to surveil and control 100% of the British people to deal with a 1.46% problem.
Eric, you were at the No Kings protest today in America. Are there parallels? Because we look at America here, a lot of us who are fighting for the individual to be sovereign, and we'd quite like Donald Trump to be in charge because he does seem to believe that an overreaching government is the stuff of nightmares.
Well, I do think there are parallels in the sense that you had people out who were pushing out and pushing back because they felt disaffected and they want their voices heard. And I think also that is the catalyst of a free society and a free democracy where you have people pushing back on their leaders and also making their voices heard. And I think that's what we saw playing out here in the United States all across the country.
And Hilary, you obviously live here, but you're very familiar, you're British. Where do you see the parallels between these two protests and what can we learn from the Americans?
Well, a couple of things there, Bev. First of all, I would love to have interviewed anyone that was protesting and saying, what do you actually mean by king? What do you actually mean that Donald Trump has done? President Trump has now just accomplished all of these peace deals, and really important, what you think about it, I mean, what's the UN doing? The UN's doing nothing. We spend $3.6 billion. Look at all the things that President Trump is accomplishing. Don't you want the illegals out of our country? Don't you want lower crime? So the things he's doing have benefited all those very people that are marching. So I would love to ask them what on earth they were protesting about. I think it's just really a soundbite that they were given. That's number one. Now, with regard to the digital ID in the UK, think about this. Always follow the money. Who is behind this? Who's making the money on this? Because I think somebody is really connected to the UK government. And yes, you're totally right, it's about control. And what I think is really sad, you're right, grew up in England, but I'm an American by choice now. What I think is what you're seeing really the disintegration of what was the Great Britain.
Let's look at the protest today in America, because you were there, Eric, weren't you? And you brought this footage for us to maybe try and understand what the No Kings concept is.
Standing here on Pennsylvania Avenue with the Capitol behind me, the White House in front of me. You've got a throng of protesters and demonstrators out on the streets for the No Kings protest, pushing back against many of the Trump administration's policies. And so we're hearing speakers, a lot of fervor, a lot of spirit today. This is one of the anchor No Kings protests, which is taking place across the country, where you're looking at thousands of people out on the streets. A very, very spirited and active day.
Fiona, I think that the issue here is that the No Kings protest is a slightly amorphous object to which they are fighting back. It's all sorts of things rolled into a figurehead of Donald Trump. The No to Digital ID is a very clear ambition of the people at your protest today. And why were they there? Did people have do they understand the implications of digital ID, do you think?
I think they do. I think there is more to understand, and I'm sorry I can't remember the name of the other lady on the panel. This is globalist diktat. This is above the level of nation. This is something that's rolling out across the world under the guise of different excuses, whether it be fraud, immigration, whatever excuse they need to use to make people fear whatever it is they can be coerced by. And I think we've seen that before, haven't we, Bev, where they've made people so fearful and scared that they've accepted something without any informed consent. And this is coming from the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, who, in my opinion, are just a humanitarian cover for the globalists. And of course, Tony Blair is an agenda contributor to the World Economic Forum. And he's obviously been trying to bring this about since 2004 and tried really hard. So it's globalist diktat handed down. Sorry.
So would there how many people in that crowd today do you think would be fans of President Trump?
Well, I'd say a fair few. I mean, I'm very apolitical, Bev. I to be honest, I don't think voting is democratic here. I think politicians, when they've got something good to say, for example, I've worked with Andrew Bridgen, who spoke for the COVID jab injured and bereaved, and I appreciate certain voices, but I can't say I've got trust in any of them. And I've been doing what I've been doing, Bev, for nearly 6 years now. And when it comes to some decisions out of the White House, I can't say I agree. I used to have a very good relationship with Bobby Kennedy personally. And yeah, I'm a humanitarian, I'm an activist. I want to give a voice to the people and organise for the people.
Eric, were the people at the protests here in America today, were they worried for democracy, or is there a sense of defeatism which Fiona's there describing, this sense of kind of, well, nobody represents me anymore? Is it that they feel that Donald Trump doesn't represent them, but they would be Democrats at heart?
And there was no defeatism in the crowd at all. In fact, I thought this was a very spirited, very energized crowd. Quite frankly, I was surprised that it got as large as it did. And we have to remember, this is actually the second No Kings rally that we've seen this year. The first one actually took place over the summer across the nation. And I think today what you're seeing is a follow-up on that. And also, I think it's also having an impact, particularly on the president's approval ratings. We just got new polling data out from the Associated Press that shows that Donald Trump is at historical lows right now. And I think what we're seeing here is this is a conflict, a very spirited tension that's playing out right now, because you do have a president that is really blowing through boundaries, and you have an enormous amount of people that are clearly afraid and unhappy with what they're seeing. The question is, how is this going to play out? And more importantly, who's going to win. We'll know that answer next year in the midterm elections.
Hillary, do you understand what the people protesting in the US today were concerned about?
Well, I don't think they understand, Bev. That's my point. It's kind of like when people vote. You ask people about history. You ask people about what's happened. They really don't know. It's like when people were protesting from the river to the sea. I would have loved to have asked them which river, which sea. Tell me about the Balfour Declaration. Tell me about 1917. They'd actually have no clue whatsoever. So I'd actually like to ask them, like I said, what, are you opposed to the peace that President Trump has accomplished? Are you opposed to the illegals being out of this country? What, you really want your tax dollars, do you, to go to illegals? And you want more crime, do you? If you ask them those questions, I don't think they'd have the answers. I don't think they know, Bev.
Well, what combines both protests, what joins them both, definitely is a sense of, as we heard the guy in the crowd there in London, the people taking power from the elected who seem to think that they have control over the people, and it's the people saying, no, 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 we elect you. You don't. We should be controlling you, not the other way around.
Right.
And that is an interesting sort of social phenomenon that's happening all around the world at the moment, isn't it? Fiona Rose Diamond, thank you so much for organising the event. Thank you so much for keeping the momentum going on the digital ID protests. We need people like you who are banging the drum all the time. Thank you so much.
If I can just say as well, like I
Thanks,
think
Fiona.
the education, what Hillary said, is really important. People need to empower themselves with knowledge and actually know what they're standing against. It was very clear in London today. Mass non-compliance is the way out of it. massnoncompliance.com if you want to find out more, because we're going to keep going. This is just the beginning.
Okay. Fantastic. Thanks, Fiona. On digital ID, I need to tell you, of course, that our Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said a new digital ID scheme will help combat illegal working while making it easier for the vast majority of people to use vital government services. Let me know your thoughts this evening. gbnews.com/your say. Still to come on The Late Show Live.
She describes 3 sexual encounters with her. Again, those have been excerpted. We read about those in the newspapers this week. I mean, extraordinarily, it contains lines such as she can't remember the day of the 3rd time she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew.
That is Rob Crilly from the Daily Telegraph. He lives here in Washington, but of course he writes for one of the most popular British newspapers. And last night, he exclusively gave us a look at the blackmail allegations inside Virginia Giuffre's unreleased memoir. Tonight we'll bring you part 2 live with fresh details on the deal to keep her silent for the sake of the late Queen. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless, and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I am Bev Turner. Thank you very much for joining me here in Washington. So, new revelations have emerged about Prince Andrew's secret legal deal with Virginia Giuffre. According to her upcoming memoir, Nobody's Girl, Giuffre says that she agreed to a 1-year gag order to stop her case from overshadowing Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee. The book claims that Andrew insisted on the silence clause as part of their settlement in 2022. And tonight, GB News can bring you even more exclusive revelations with the only British journalist to have access to the memoir before it's released next week, The Telegraph's chief US correspondent, Rob Crilly. Rob, we made all the headlines in the UK today. Thank you for doing that. Maybe we can do the same again now. So what's the revelations?
Right, so look, let's go back to November 2019. You remember that's the date of Prince Andrew's disastrous Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis. He appears not to regret his friendship with Epstein, and he comes across as rather cold and arrogant, right? But listen to this. This is Virginia Giuffre's own words. As devastating as this interview was for Prince Andrew, for my legal team, it was like an injection of jet fuel. Its contents would not only help us build an ironclad case against the Prince, but also open the door to potentially subpoenaing his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, and their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie. So you remember his defence was he'd taken his daughter Beatrice out for pizza on the date he was supposed to be with Virginia Giuffre. So he has opened up the whole of his family to potentially being questioned, to be deposed, subpoenaed in this case. Now, that's November 2019. Virginia Giuffre then files her case against Prince Andrew. You remember he wouldn't accept it. He hid behind the walls of his home on Windsor. Said his legal team said the papers hadn't been properly served, all of this. Anyway, we get now to February of 2022. We're getting towards the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. And she writes, after he'd stonewalled us for months, the scheduling of his deposition, which was to take place on March the 10th, seemed to motivate him. So we're getting forward to the time where he's got to sit down with opposing lawyers. He'll be on camera in the American courthouse way, and he will be filmed as he answers all these awkward questions. Was he at a Pizza Express? What about his medical records? Does he really have a condition that means he can't sweat? Remember how crucial that was to his defence. So February 2022, the Platinum Jubilee, the celebrations have already rather begun. It all culminates in June, a couple of months later, but they've already begun. Anyway, a settlement is made. It is made public a few days later. It's made public, I have the date here, February the 15th. The settlement is announced. They issue a joint statement, Giuffre and Prince Andrew, saying that he will pay some money. It's undisclosed at that time. And it also goes on to say that he understands that women have suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, here's the crucial bit. She writes, I agreed to a 1-year gag order which seemed important to the Prince because it ensured that his mother's Platinum Jubilee would not be tarnished any more than it already had been.
Which begs the question, did the Queen know about all of this, and did she deem it to be so serious that she needed Virginia Giuffre to say nothing for a year? Because that is very damaging for the royal family.
Can you imagine if this case had proceeded and you got different members of the Duke of York's family, as he was then, he's been stripped of that title of course, trooping in to legal offices, each being asked these terrible questions? There would have been a succession, there would have been headline after headline after headline, all at the time we're supposed to be celebrating her extraordinary reign. I think there's a couple of points I would add. We know that Prince Andrew was very reluctant to settle. He wanted to fight this, and he'd ignored advisors a lot of the time to even do that BBC Newsnight interview. But for once, he seems to have actually done the sensible thing. And the other thing is, we learned later, the Telegraph reported, the payout was £12 million to her, $2 million to her charity. A big chunk of it was paid by the Queen. So she was stepping in to bail out, and all the reporting was that was her favourite son, remember. So, you know, can you imagine in her final years having to bail out her son like that?
So the late Queen paid that settlement in order to not cause a distraction with the Jubilee.
I mean, I don't want to get beyond what's written here.
Yeah.
We know that she paid the money. Now, whether she was buying the silence, I think that might be a step too far. But she certainly wanted to get this finished and over with. And I think that once again, you have a narrative of a victim being silenced, essentially.
And it's awful because it's difficult to read into it in any other way. I've often thought it's hard to know with the royal household how they handle the bad PR. Or how aware are they? How bothered are they, for want of a better word? Because often they don't comment on anything, do they? That is the royal way. So in the absence of commenting on this, the actions, I think, are very powerful. The actions of paying her, be silent, go away, we're not going to let those girls have their day in court, we're not going to let Andrew be held accountable for this. That trail has to come back to the royal household and to the Queen herself.
Yeah.
Will it damage the reputation of the Queen? As I'm saying it, I can't believe how damning that is to a woman that I thought was the best royal we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I won't make the leap from the payment to the silence in her case. I think Andrew, I mean, the other story that's out today, the Mail on Sunday's scoop, is that he actually passed on Virginia Giuffre's date of birth, some other information, the social security number, to his police bodyguard, essentially asking him in 2011 to dig up some dirt on her. The Mail on Sunday has got hold of incriminating emails to that effect. And that, I think, speaks very poorly, I mean, about Prince Andrew. And look, he's denied all the allegations against him.
Of course.
But
12 million quid is quite hard to explain away if you are entirely without blame in some way.
And if you are busy trying to dig up dirt on your accuser, that's not a good look.
Is Charles mentioned in the book much, Rob?
No. And I've got to say, I mean, a lot of this book is about her life. She had a miserable childhood, treated appallingly, and ends up as the sort of vulnerable woman that came into Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. There's not much mention of the rest of the royal family, other than Andrew. She does also mention another episode where they got wind that somebody in Andrew's team was trying to get an online troll to go after Virginia Giuffre to try and undermine. You remember the famous picture that came out of the prince with his arm around her?
Yeah.
They wanted to find somebody who might have evidence or be able to prove that the picture was manipulated. And they found an online troll who had been criticising Giuffre. They said, do you have anything? And also wondered if she could set up a second account just for the
This
trolling.
is this famous picture. Now, of course, if it was today, you could say, well, it's AI, but we didn't have AI in those days, and I don't think the authenticity of that picture can be called into question particularly, can it? I mean, the picture itself isn't necessary, it's not a crime, but obviously that is the picture which has come back to haunt him.
She describes the moment of taking that picture and how she kept some, remember the old disposable cameras we used to have? She had a bunch of those, and she thought she was meeting royalty. It would be a miss to not to get a picture. My family would love to hear about this. And then after what happens with him on that night, she basically the next day races to get them developed and gets several copies of them.
Any other powerful figures, Rob, in the book who might be a little nervous?
Plenty of figures. I mean, well, first of all, I'll deal with Donald Trump. He's in there, but actually comes out pretty well, treats her nicely, actually throws Epstein out of his club, Mar-a-Lago, as we know. There are people who are not named, and there is a former Prime Minister who is particularly brutal in her in his treatment of her, and I should be very clear, there are no other identifying details. Please don't start listing British Prime Ministers you can think of. I know there are online some names floating around.
But she doesn't mention who it is?
She doesn't say anything about who it is, so I presume they are still alive and therefore would likely to be litigious. There are a number of high-profile scientists. Some are mentioned, some are not, because you remember Epstein was funding the work of a lot of high-profile scientists. They are in there. There is a story about Ghislaine Maxwell and George Clooney that she used to boast about. The story's been out there before. It's not exclusive to this, but how she serviced him in a cupboard in some way.
Ghislaine Maxwell did.
Ghislaine Maxwell. There are all sorts of names that crop up. Some of them, some of them just in passing, and she'll mention actually that person was very, very pleasant. Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, is in there, and she talks about being encouraged to massage his feet, and that's as far as it goes. So Bill Clinton, of course, is in there. The famous trip to Africa that they made with Kevin Spacey on board. No suggestion of any impropriety. So it's an extraordinary galaxy of figures, and some of the worst offenders, shall we say, aren't named.
But when I've no doubt the lawyers have been through this with a fine-tooth comb, and sometimes I think these kind of books get a little castrated in that process, which is unfortunate. Right. But as a reader, are you left to draw some conclusions about how could anybody of sane mind been amongst that crowd in the room with the massage beds? It is not normal to have your friends round to a house and there to be a young girl who massages your feet. I think people will be implicated, I imagine, just because it would. How do you explain away that you couldn't see it?
Yeah, there are young girls everywhere, and there is art. You know, look, you know, some of the most famous paintings in the world are nude images, right? But the sorts of descriptions of pictures that Epstein had go beyond what we might see in a museum or a gallery. Also, he had a cupboard that was filled with photographs of naked young women. It's one of the birthday presents she describes in here for Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell gets her undressed and takes pictures of her. So I don't understand how you could exist in that world and not have questions. But what I will say is, if you are a rich and powerful man and you wear a nice suit and you have a $200 haircut, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
It's surprising how many people will turn a blind eye in the presence of such wealth and power. And that's before we even talk about the potential blackmail plots of people who were filmed inside the house. So what about, just briefly then at the end, Rob, will this reflect badly on the Queen, this explanation of the non-disclosure agreement, this silencing, this gagging order? We don't have confirmation that the Queen, she got 14 million quid, 2 million to a charity and 12 million pounds to herself, some of which came from the Queen.
Yeah, I mean dollars. I mean, look, I think the way, but still, a huge amount. Look, I guess the way I would put it is it's a mother bailing out her son in his darkest hour. I mean, you know, it's not nice, and I don't want to say that she was responsible for silencing Virginia Giuffre. This was Prince Andrew and his lawyers and their crisis management strategy after, frankly, they screwed it up for years and years and years, because as he's discovering, you can't shut this away.
Will this book change the British people's view of the royal family?
I think Andrew's reputation is toast anyway, so I think it's baked into the reputation. I think we've seen decisive action from the King, presumably led by Prince William. They've done the right thing. Too late.
Yeah.
But they've done the right thing.
Well, too late. That is the conclusion, isn't it? Rob, thank you so much. Rob Crilly from the Daily Telegraph. Now, of course, we must remind you that Prince Andrew has previously denied any wrongdoing whatsoever. Coming up on The Late Show Live.
We're going to have a surge of strong, good people, patriots, and they're going to go in, they straighten it all out.
Well, the streets are safer, but I'm going to be talking to a woman making headlines across America tonight because she was sacked after refusing to bow down to woke media bosses when she praised President Trump's crime crackdown. Also tonight.
More money in the pockets of working people. Higher living standards promised by this Labour government, delivered by this Labour government.
Oh, it's all just so predictable. Remember when we were told that diesel was the cheap option and then we got stung with higher costs? Well, Rachel Reeves could be plotting the same trap with electric cars. It was inevitable, wasn't it? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversations.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Two princes from the Spin Doctors there. I don't know about you, but two princes. There's certainly one prince in need of a spin doctor tonight, if you believe the following front pages. The Mail on Sunday. Prince Andrew told the Met to dig up dirt on Virginia Giuffre. This story is not going away, as you've just heard in my conversation with Rob Crilly there. What will the blowback be on the royal family, on the wider royal family, and even on the late Queen herself? The Sun, they're leading on it as well. Prince Andrew cancelled a party for his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson because of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Get out your smallest violin for that. The Observer quotes a broadcaster, Emily Maitlis, responding to her infamous 2019 interview with Prince Andrew. He lied to me about Epstein. Surely just work that out. How is that a headline? Surely she worked that out 5 minutes after the interview. Anyway, Washington Post here in America. Large crowds gather across the country for the No Kings protest of Trump crowds. Gathered at some no Trump, basically is what they're saying. They gathered at some 2,600 locations for a new round of protests against President Trump. There are tensions, of course, over the shutdown, immigration crackdowns and military deployments in cities specifically. Let me know your thoughts this evening. gbnews.com/your say. Let's go to London and get the take of former Conservative advisor Charlie Rowley. Charlie, very good evening. Thank you for joining me this evening. It's so nice to see you. So let's start with, shall we go with the Emily Maitlis revelation? Apparently Prince Andrew lied to her about Epstein. How many years ago did he do that interview? She only just worked it out.
You're absolutely right. I think it was about 6 years ago, wasn't it now? And you talked about spin doctors there. Even I don't think, not that I was any particularly good at it, I don't think even I could spin Prince Andrew out of this one. I mean, it's been an absolute disaster for him and the reputational damage that he's brought upon the royal family, to a point in which now King Charles and Prince William, I think, have both come to the conclusion that for the sake of the future of the royal household, that Andrew has just got to take an even further step back to what he was already doing in the first place. I mean, it is really damaging headlines for the UK, damaging for the royal family, and damaging for the trust and the love that people have on both sides of the pond for the monarch.
I've got Eric Ham and Hilary Fordwich with me in the studio, so let's bring them in as well while we're here. Hilary, are you a royal fan? I sort of suspect you might be. I don't know why I'm coming to that conclusion. How terribly stereotypical of me. But can the royal family get their way out of this? They've been in scandals before, of course.
Well, fan is one thing, I think. I think you're absolutely right. I'm supportive of the royal family, but that's because of all the things they have always stood for and what they've done for Great Britain and for the Commonwealth and actually for the world in terms of stability, in terms of morals, in terms of as an example to the nation, in terms of being unifying, in terms of being something that, you know, the US is very polarised. We all know it's very polarised here. There's very little that everyone in America gets behind. But in the UK, maybe it's something like 11% of people are Republicans against the monarchy. I think it's been such a unifying force for the nation for centuries. And now something like this, what I think this actually indicates is I think this is one of the first moves of our future Prince William, King William V. I think he is very much behind this, from people that I know who know people who know. He absolutely was disgusted with this entire debacle, and he does not have tolerance for his Uncle Andrew, and he has put his foot down. And I think this is something that is better late than never. Should have happened quite a while ago, but it's best that it happens now.
Eric, are you jealous that we have a royal family? As you can see, they're terribly well behaved.
Well, we did just have a massive rally take place across the country for no king. So no, I'm not jealous. I think in America, I think we actually like the idea of not having a monarchy. But of course, watching this anvil of Epstein continue to bring down very powerful people is something to behold.
You might be pleased with not having a monarchy, but as Hilary said there is something really special about our royal family, isn't there, in terms of national identity? People think of the Great Britain and the UK, they think of the royal family. What's your equivalent?
Well, don't we have something very similar? At least we have someone here who married into the royal family. Of course, it hasn't worked out as well as people on both sides of the pond would have liked. But nevertheless, there is that connection that we're seeing play out. Does sell a lot of newspapers too.
Well, you know what? And I've also heard there are a lot of Americans say what they love is that they have we have all the pomp and circumstance we get to watch, but we don't have to pay for it. That's actually one of the things that Americans actually love. But I just go back to the point. America is a very polarized nation. There's almost nothing that everybody agrees on, and I think it's the great unifying factor, and that's something we don't have. And I remember hearing actually at the coronation when looking at all of those politicians, and somebody actually said, we look at our motley politicians and we say to ourselves, would we actually want to have one of them actually ruling the nation? And I think a democratic monarchy, a constitutional monarchy, the way it is, really works well.
Charlie, do you think Prince William will come out okay from this? I've been wondering what he could do now from a PR point of view. Is it a statement from Prince to say, actually, that was my choice to get my uncle to sling his hook? I took the titles off him. I think the British public would quite like that.
Do you know what? I think they would, but I don't think he will do that, because I think he will just take on a bit more responsibility. He'll quietly go about his day-to-day. I mean, the difference here, I think, exposed to America, obviously with the monarchy that everybody loves, that is the unifying factor. I mean, in America, you've got the flag, which everybody, I hope, loves, and everybody can get behind the flag. You barely see a UK flag being flown here, or St George's one. You do now, a bit more recently, which is a good thing, but people have been too apologetic about a flag here. But for Prince William, I think this is essential because, look, I think everybody in the past, and I think in life, everybody wants to impress Granny. Nobody wants to upset your grandparents. And when you had the late Queen in the throne still, she was very much in control. She was still very much the matriarch of the family. People obviously danced to her tune. Obviously, King Charles, Prince Charles as he was previously, now assumed to the throne. He's in a bit more difficult position because he's got the issues of his son on the one hand, Prince Harry, that's given him a headache, and the book that was revealed, you know, Spare, on the one hand. He's got his brother, Prince Andrew, on the other. It is a massive headache for King Charles, obviously still undergoing cancer treatment. So he's got to draw the line, and I think it is probably better, even though I do think, and I totally agree, Prince William has been the one to say, come on, Dad, you know, we've got a succession going on here, and when it's my turn, I'm not going to have your brother kicking up all the kinds of headlines and fuss that he has in the past. So you need to deal with this. And I think, to King Charles' credit, he has been the one to be seen to be doing it. And I think that's probably the best thing to show strength in King Charles, even though the voluntarily giving up your titles is a bit like saying I'm, you know, voluntarily stopped going down to my local pub, even though I've just been barred from it. You know, it's not voluntary. He's been told to go for the right reasons, and I think that's a strength for King Charles, but ultimately a good decision, the right one, encouraged by Prince William.
Yeah, OK, Charlie, thank you so much. Charlie Rowley in London there. Hilary and Eric, thank you for now. Still to come. In fact, let me know your thoughts, because we're going to take a quick break and I can have a read of them while we do, because still to come on The Late Show Live.
Will he, in the interests of public safety, follow the lead of France, Denmark, Belgium and others and ban the burka?
And now Portugal, they are also going to ban burkas and niqabs in most public spaces. As more and more countries take this position, could Britain and America follow suit? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Bev Turner. Now, Portugal is set to ban burqas and niqabs in most public spaces. MPs have approved a proposal from the far-right Chega party, and the measure, citing women's rights and security concerns, would fine offenders up to €4,000, and anyone forcing someone to wear a veil could face up to 3 years in jail. So let's get the take of broadcaster and commentator Fahima Mohammed on this. Fahima, thank you so much for joining me. So just your thoughts on the banning of these face coverings. First of all, please just tell me exactly what you think.
Well, I think this obsession with Muslim women's clothing isn't protecting women, it's policing them. And when politicians use liberation to justify discrimination, that's not British values, that's authoritarianism and dressed up as a concern. And as you mentioned, it is a far-right party that has actually put this ban where a majority of women do not actually wear that. It's so extraordinary how quickly some politicians wrap themselves in language of women's rights and when it comes to Muslim women's clothing and about security and all of that, when other places it's silence on oppression of Muslim women or just women in general. I think it's just truly about not anything to do with sort of women's rights or security or even sort of, trying to make it like as if to say we're using feminism as a weapon to police women's clothing and their choices. It is totally against British values and their freedom of choice and rights. And now to actually tell, the state to say, well, we're going to, tell people how their wardrobes are going to look, that is absolutely ridiculous. And I can't understand how this is still continuing and how it's still happening. But I guess, like you said, it's a far-right party.
Well, not all of those countries are run by what might be described as right-wing or far-right parties, but there's certainly a movement. There are more countries banning the burqa and the niqab as opposed to fewer countries banning it. So your take is feminism is being used as an excuse. So what about this? What if it's not about feminism? What if it's about a fear about the march of Islam in certain countries and Islamic extremists behind the scenes? We've seen at the moment in the UK, these hate preachers talking about women being stoned, how best to stone a woman from a British woman. And from a British man, how can I justify to my daughters, Fahima, that those men exist in the UK?
Well, I guess it's the same way you can't really justify all men, as being abuse partners or cheaters. And we don't ban all of them. We don't, criminalize all of them. Yes, unfortunately, there are cases of coercion, and we handle those with laws, not a blanket ban on everyone. Now, you're taking few cases, and if that's the rule of law that you want to apply, then we should really do this for everything. Why is it, again, that is a Muslim women? And when we talk about criminalization and identity, we have laws. laws to put in place to actually say, remove your niqab if it comes to a government building or anything like that, whether it's in the airports or in the courthouses or even for your passport or banks. We already have that. It's already existing. So again, and we don't find women on the streets that are even, going out there pickpocketing.
I'm so sorry, Fahima. We've run out of time. I'm frustrated. We've run out of time. I'm frustrated. We've run out of time.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure now starting to dominate our weather pattern. Outbreaks of rain pushing north and eastward, some pretty brisk winds as well, but still on the mild side for the time of year. Wet start across western parts this morning. Heavy rain across Northern Ireland. A warning in force here for some localised flooding as we head through the morning. The rain slowly pushing north and eastwards through the day. So some eastern areas having a dry morning, but the rain reaching here by the afternoon. At the same time, sunny spells starting to follow in across some western parts. A pretty blustery day, gales around some western coasts, but mild with the winds coming in from the south. Temperatures around 13 to 15 Celsius. Into the evening time, the rain continues to push north and eastward, so a wet end to the day across much of Scotland. After a dry period across Aberdeenshire, the rain soon moving in here. Pretty windy too. Temperatures around 11 to 13 Celsius. But some sunshine moving in after a wet morning. Early afternoon across Northern Ireland here. Some scattered showers for Wales and the West Country, but wet across the Midlands. Eastwards into East Anglia, the London area, seeing some outbreaks of rain in places too. And then through the early hours, the rain pushes out into the North Sea, and then the low pressure itself starts to move in closer. So we see bands of heavy showers pushing in across the west, some rumbles of thunder possible during the early hours. But it will keep temperatures up, a lot of cloud around, some strong winds developing, particularly in the southwest. The temperatures for most staying in double figures. So Monday, dominated by low pressure, we'll see outbreaks of heavy showery rain pushing north and eastwards, particularly across England and Wales. Best of the drier, sunnier weather across central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, but rain still affecting Orkney and Shetland, only slowly clearing here. Blustery winds, particularly along the south coast, some gales possible, and temperatures generally around 14 to 15 Celsius. See you soon.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You have the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tonight, how damaging are the latest Prince Andrew revelations for the whole royal family? This is The Late Show Live. On The Late Show Live tonight.
What's going on? The march is going on.
Power to the people.
Everyone, power to the people.
Power to the people.
There we go. Lots of people from everywhere. Go on. No digital ID. How you doing?
Power to the people. Thousands of protesters marched through central London today to oppose the government's plans for mandatory digital ID. But it's not just Britain that's been rocked by protests today.
I think that the state of the world that we are in right now is really horrible. I want my rights back. I'm off. I need Trump out of office. And yeah, no kings. That. But yeah.
Isn't it? Well, millions have taken to the streets here in America. Over 2,000 separate gatherings were organised under the banner of No Kings Here. People are pushing back against, well, what exactly? Donald Trump, as they see it, having too much power in his own hands. But why? Also tonight.
So we're going to have some stories there about the settlement that she came to reach with Prince Andrew and why things were looking so bad for him that he was forced to settle. He wanted to fight on it and clear his name, but actually things were looking so bad. It would have dragged members of his family into court for depositions. It was that bad.
So last night we exclusively gave you a look at the blackmail allegations inside Virginia Giuffre's unreleased memoir. Tonight we gave you some fresh details on the deal to keep Giuffre silent for the sake of the Queen. Also tonight. We're going to be looking at the headlines in the UK and those in America which affect you at home. We are live in Washington, just yards from the White House. It's just around the corner, and we're bringing you the stories that America's talking about, including this.
Now, we'll say thank you to Trump for bringing these National Guards and doing what they're doing down here in Memphis right now.
That's Dee Dee Manning. She's been fired for praising President Trump's crime crackdown. She's making headlines across America because she refused to bow down to anti-Trump bosses in the media. And I know you are going to love the story of people on the streets of London being spray painted in the face.
You know what's going to happen, right? No, not running, no running, no running.
It looks bad, but I will tell you why that's happening in just a moment. I am Bev Turner, sitting here for Ben Leo. This is The Late Show Live. Welcome to the second hour. The ads have been dropped. Don't go anywhere. So tonight, new revelations about Prince Andrew's secret legal deal with Virginia Giuffre. According to her upcoming memoir, Nobody's Girl, Giuffre says that she agreed to a one-year gagging order, a non-disclosure agreement where she couldn't say anything so that she didn't overshadow Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee. And the book claims that Andrew insisted on the silence clause as part of their 2022 settlement. A little earlier, GB News brought you this exclusive revelation with the only British journalist to have access to the memoir before its release next week. It's the Telegraph's chief US correspondent, Rob Crilly, talking to me in the studio.
We're getting towards the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. And she writes, after he'd stonewalled us for months, the scheduling of his deposition, which was to take place on March the 10th, seemed to motivate him. So we're getting forward to the time where he's got to sit down with opposing lawyers. He'll be on camera in the American courthouse way, and he will be filmed as he answers all these awkward questions. Was he at a Pizza Express? What about his medical records? Does he really have a condition that means he can't sweat? Remember how crucial that was to his defense. So February 2022, the Platinum Jubilee, the celebrations have already rather begun. It all culminates in June, a couple of months later, but they've already begun. Anyway, a settlement is made. It is made public a few days later. It's made public, I have the date here, February the 15th. The settlement is announced. They issue a joint statement, Giuffre and Prince Andrew, saying that he will pay some money. It's undisclosed at that time. She writes, I agreed to a 1-year gag order which seemed important to the Prince because it ensured that his mother's Platinum Jubilee would not be tarnished any more than it already had been. We learned later, the Telegraph reported, the payout was £12 million to her, $2 million to her charity. A big chunk of it was paid by the Queen. So she was stepping in to bail out, and all the reporting was that that was her favourite son. Remember, the Mail on Sunday's scoop is he actually passed on Virginia Giuffre's date of birth, some other information, the social security number, to his police bodyguard, essentially asking him in 2011 to dig up some dirt on her. In another episode where they got wind that somebody in Andrew's team was trying to get an online troll to go after Virginia Giuffre to try and undermine. You remember the famous picture that came out of the Prince with his arm around her?
Yeah.
They wanted to find somebody who might have evidence or be able to prove that the picture was manipulated.
I'm joined in the studio by political analysts Eric Ham and Hilary Fordwich. As we're listening to that there, Eric, as an American, what do you make of it? The Queen doesn't come out well from that story.
Well, when you look at how, I think, powerful this Epstein saga continues to be, and we're talking about a man that's been dead now for quite a few years, and the allegations continue to permeate, and they continue to have impact in the highest echelons of society. Donald Trump has always been seen as Teflon here in the United States politically, but this is an issue where even now there are growing concerns and criticism of the Speaker of the House suggesting that he's refusing to bring Congress back because they don't want to release these Epstein files. And I think what we're seeing here is just potentially just how bad the wrongdoing is. And I think it has the potential to not only continue to plague both sides of the pond, but it's really, I think, having an impact on how we view people who operate in very powerful and elite circles.
I think that is very accurate, actually, Hilary. It does make you look at them, the people, the rich, the powerful, the influential, people like Epstein, who was able to have people in his house where he had massage beds, and they turned a blind eye to what was clearly paedophilia, inappropriate behaviour with young girls, even if they were over the age of consent. Still really massive age gaps between old men in that house and young women. What do you make of the whole thing?
Well, I think you're absolutely right there, Bev, with regard to the rich and powerful, because they seem to think that they can do anything that they want, and that also that air of privilege obviously is what has pervaded it's pervasive through all of Prince Andrew's life, definitely. I will say this with regard to President Trump. It's on the record that he wouldn't even have him in Mar-a-Lago anymore after a real estate deal went bad, and then he also took Virginia Giuffre, actually lured her away from just working at Mar-a-Lago. So I think that's good for President Trump, even though he was involved with him. I also think that Epstein was no fool, and I think that obviously he made tapes and he has blackmailing information about the rich and powerful, and there's too many people, both sides of the aisle and behind the scenes and in the deep state, involved in this, and that's why we're not seeing more from it. But with regard to the Queen, the initial question that you asked, actually, Eric, one thing I would say, I would be shocked if she ever knew all of the details. They would have kept her from all of the details, number one. Number two, Prince Andrew to this day denies all of his activities, and he certainly would not have been telling his mummy those activities. But last but not least, when he said to Emily Maitlis in that Nightline interview that I'm just too honourable and that's why I flew to New York and spent 5 days with Epstein, that right there just shows the kind of person that he is. He'll use any kind of verbiage to try and cover his despicable activities. Those photographs in Central Park were damaging and damning at an absolute minimum, and I think what's happening now, and I said it before and I'll say it again, this is the beginning of King William V's reign in terms of what we're going to see. No tolerance for such, and he's looking at the longevity of the monarchy. Eric.
But I do think why this continues to be so problematic is because there are so many and too many victims. And I think it's hard to simply contain all of them.
Correct.
And I think it speaks to just how far not only the depravity of the people ran, but also what it continues to do for these victims. And what's, I think, so disheartening is it seems as though we're hearing so much, again, from powerful people, and it seems like no one is actually speaking for them.
I don't know if you've had much experience with legal cases, both of you, or in your life, but as Rob Crilly was explaining, you have this process of discovery here in America, don't you, which is before you go to court, and hopefully you avoid going to court, you bring to the table all of your facts and whatever you might have at your disposal, and it's almost like a trial run for the court case, isn't it? You get interviewed by the lawyers in a room. I went through it because my now ex-husband, but he got in a very bad road traffic accident in America whilst he was working for the Discovery Channel, and so we had a case of an insurance claim case. Now, we were very careful because we knew we were being watched about what we said publicly, because they would have loved to have said this was your husband, James Cracknell's fault. It wasn't my truck driver's fault, and it was. So how can Prince Andrew, having been in that same situation, knowing that everything he said would be scrutinised by the lawyers of Virginia Giuffre, go on the BBC's main news show and do an interview where he just, as Rob Crilly said, just gave them everything?
He did. It was shocking.
That is just stupid beyond belief.
Well, I think when you say it's stupid, I think it's living proof of his, air again, his arrogance, that he thinks he's not only above the law, but he grew up with such privilege. He's not like us, Bev. He doesn't think like us. Well, I think he thinks like somebody who's been able to get away with everything his whole life. And, I think probably one of the Queen's few faults was that he was her favourite son and she loved him. And that's where it is difficult for the monarch to also be running not only just the monarchy, but also it's her own personal family. And that's what caused it. I don't want to reduce this down to a parenting issue, but this is a boy whose mother literally paid 12 million quid to keep him out of trouble. Correct. Guess what? He obviously knew she was going to do that.
Of course, and like it was just stated, this is someone who lives in a bubble. I mean, your traffic case pales in comparison. He knows that he's got an entire apparatus around him that insulates him, and that he can just throw money.
But clearly not, though, Eric. Fast forward several years, and he's now lost his titles, he's lost his position in the family, he's got no reputation.
But does any of that really matter when you're talking about someone in a position of privilege and power?
I think what we realise is it's no coincidence that it had to be after his mother had died.
Yes.
That the protection around him, this gilded cage, you might describe it as, actually, that he's been living in, that fell away when the Queen passed away. And then he was obviously much more vulnerable, and his brother and his nephew are not going to protect him in the right way.
You're totally right about...
Not the right way, in the same way.
In the same way, you're totally right about that. I will say one thing that endures, though, is the lease that he has on Royal Lodge, because that goes to, I think, is it 2067 or something astronomical like that. So I think I would be surprised if he keeps living there. And I think once Prince William becomes king, I think you're going to see even further measures. And I heard the word amputation. There's going to be an amputation of him.
You know who I'm thinking about as well in all of this are his daughters. Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, because they've done nothing wrong, and I do feel for them.
Well, I agree, except you do know that they were the ones that urged him to go and do the Emily Maitlis interview.
I did not know that.
Yes.
How do you know that, Hilary?
because it's publicly known. It's not just that I know that, but it's publicly known. Yes, that's been publicly
Are we
stated.
sure he didn't say? Sure he hasn't said, "Oh, my daughters wanted to do it." It's the kind of sort of slimy thing you might do.
That's it. That is true. But
yeah.
no, they were behind him doing that. Yes.
And never underestimate, when we're talking about crimes like this, never underestimate the role misogyny plays in this, in terms of what a man might think about how little value there is in these victims, that this is something that will simply just go away because I'm a very powerful man and this is just a woman who just really doesn't.
And to be clear, and also just to be clear, that Prince Andrew, yeah, I was going to say, he was never charged, he was never convicted of any particular crime.
Not by court, no.
Never ended up in court, didn't ever have his
but he's not
day
being
in court.
stripped of so much for having done nothing.
He
so
would
there
say,
is something.
Well, he would say he's been a victim of this awful smear campaign against him. But I return to 14 million quid, and whose mother pays off someone for 14 million quid if there's no smoking gun? That I think was actually the most stupid thing they ever did.
Well, yes, but of course it was done right before the Jubilee, and it was done to protect her Jubilee year. And of course they knew, which we didn't know at the time, how very sick she was with her bone cancer. It wasn't disclosed, and they knew, and they wanted to salvage the last celebration that she would have with the public.
Wow. It's a different world, isn't it? You're right, Eric Ham. My case bears in significance.
Not even close.
You're right about that. Right, now moving on. Let me know your thoughts, won't you? gbnews.com/your say. Still to come tonight on The Late Show Live.
I can't speak for every street, but yes, I hear gunshots. And I hear gunshots all the time.
So over 900 arrests and 45 missing children have been rescued as President Trump makes Memphis safe again. His task force has tackled crime head-on. Local journalist Alicia Ballinger calls it a game changer for the city, but for that she lost her job. She's going to join me next to tell me her story. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. I'm still not used to the fact that you've got no adverts. Eric Ham and I are here chatting away. He's expressing a little cynicism about this story. Well, let me tell you might change your mind, Eric. Federal agents are flooding Memphis, Tennessee, tackling crime in a city long plagued by violence. President Trump's Make Memphis Safe task force has already made 900 arrests and recovered 45 children. So journalist Alicia Ballinger shared her gratitude in a TikTok post praising the administration's efforts.
I can't speak for every street, but yes, I hear gunshots, and I hear gunshots all the time. So for those that feel a certain way about my comments on why I'm happy that the National Guard is here, baby, let me tell you something. I don't care. You haven't walked a mile in my shoes. You don't live in my neighborhoods. You don't know what I've experienced. So yes, this is a huge relief for me.
So let's speak to former freelance journalist, the new Tri-State Defender, Alicia Ballinger. Now, Alicia, thank you so much for joining me. Right, your story came across my desk because I saw a clip of your son, and that's what moved me. And it was your son saying he can now play in the garden and he can kick his ball and it feels safe. Just tell me what happened before that. You had already posted, hadn't you? Your surprise about how Memphis felt different.
Absolutely. It was just merely just a day of reflection. I was just having a moment on my porch for the first time, just really just taking around the environment at that moment. You know, the kids were playing, I could hear the birds chirp. You know, it was just a really beautiful day. And in that moment of gratitude, I decided to talk about my experience via TikTok and just sharing how thankful I am to be able to just have this moment on my porch. And yeah, it snowballed into something that I never imagined.
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, you aren't necessarily a Trump supporter, but what you were seeing was just the truth before you. Is that right? Please tell me if I've got any of this story wrong.
That's
but
correct.
all you were doing was saying the truth.
Yes, I was just. I'm not into politics. I don't get into politics, but I'm an American citizen, and it's my American right to be able to thank any president of the United States. And he just happened to be Trump. And I was just grateful for it. I didn't mean anything by it. It doesn't make me a Trump supporter. It just makes me a grateful American citizen, in which I am.
And so what happened when you expressed your relief that suddenly your streets, where you'd seen multiple shootings, there's a post that you did on TikTok where you detail the crime that you had witnessed literally along the few houses where you live, how different it is. What happened when you explained on TikTok, when you said, this is amazing, my kids can play outside and I've not heard a gunshot?
Yeah, and it's true. I hadn't heard gunshots in weeks. You know, in my neighborhood, it's a normalcy to hear those type of things. So it was really noticeable when you're not hearing it. And again, just putting that out there, I then, you know, it blew up and just, again, a lot of people was hearing what I was saying, and it eventually reached back to my employer. They then reached out to me and was just like, hey, because at this point, you know, I'm receiving other opportunities and people want to know my story. And when it got around to the fact, because I said the words just thanks Trump. And it was like things completely went left. My editor at the time, she was very disgruntled about that, in which she made that very vocal, that she did not like what I said, and that if I took the opportunity to go on another national publication, and at the time it was Fox News here in the States, if I was to go on these particular platforms because they were so pro-Trump, then my tenure there would be no more. And from that point on, it was just, I felt like I was being silenced at that point. It seemed like my eyes had opened from that point, because it's like I thought that this was free speech, but I'm not even, you know, I'm at home. I'm not doing anything, you know, wrong as far as doing anything, you know, for the company, anything like that. I said nothing wrong. And literally by the next day, I'm removed from off of their platforms. I've received emails about my assignments and things being snatched. They really just did not want anything to do with me anymore after that.
So your employer there, one of the people that you were working with, they would argue that this got nothing to do with the National Guard. It's got nothing to do with more police on the streets, Delicia. Don't give credit to Donald Trump. Is that their logic?
Yes. From just dealing with all of these, you know, I've become to know a little bit more deeper about this paper, you know, in doing my research, they are very far left. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that I was working for this technically democratic paper. They felt strongly about that. And with me giving my praises to Trump, they were extremely offended. And I didn't know these things.
Let me bring in my panel here, Eric Ham and Hilary Fordwich as well. Eric, you were sort of rolling your eyes a little bit when I was trailing this story, as though this can't be because of the National Guard. So just go, Eric. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, it's good that the president actually decided to tackle crime in a high crime city that has been plagued with crime for literally years. Of course, we all know about what happened with Tyree Nichols. So we know that crime is just not crime among those who are criminals. Crime in Memphis, Tennessee is crime also occurring within the police department. It's a very corrupt city, and that corruption is endemic throughout the city. So it's good to see the president do that. But again, I'll go back to where I believe the president just falls woefully short on this issue. And that is perhaps putting the city under some type of DOJ watch list where they're watching what is happening, and also moving more resources to the city to actually tackle crime, because using the National Guard as police officers or as an impediment to crime is simply just a poor use, because it's far more expensive to do so. in that way. And I think what the president should have been doing is what we have seen from previous presidents by providing community grants or block grants so they can hire more police officers, so they can bring in the resources they need to actually tackle crime. Because here's the thing, the president can only keep them there for so long. They can't be there indefinitely.
I'm just going to interrupt you. I want to play the footage of Delicia's little boy talking about it and see if Trump could have done what you've just suggested, Eric, to make this boy's life happy this quickly. Here we go.
My name is Braylon, and I live here in Memphis. I've been noticing not just a slight change, more of a detrimental change in like how peaceful Memphis is ever since the National Guard came. There was a lot of things I couldn't do before the National Guard came because I had to worry a lot about guns and stuff. I couldn't play because I was worried that somebody might pull out a gun or something, but now I could do that, and I just wanted to thank the president of the...
Eric, how can you tell that little boy that this policy is wrong?
I'm not saying that the little boy is wrong. I think we all agree.
Or that the policy is wrong.
Oh yeah, the policy is definitely wrong because again, the National Guard, they're not trained to police. They're not trained to stop crime. They're certainly not trained to actually solve crimes. I think there are law enforcement agencies and tools that can be used for that. We all agree that crime is rampant and a huge, huge problem in Memphis, and it certainly needs to be addressed and it certainly needs to be fixed. However, I think what we're seeing right now is just not the way to actually fix it.
Hillary?
Well, I think it's absolutely ludicrous to even contemplate that anything this little boy said wasn't anything other than absolutely fabulous. And who cares who's stopping the crime? Just stop the crime. And this little boy felt safe. We should all be rejoicing. One of the things I've always said is President Trump did not just beat the Democrats. He beat the deep state, but he also beat social media. If you post anything, by the way, that's even like being on a conservative network, it gets squashed by social media. It's amazing the forces behind what the Democrats have stood for, which is more crime, which is illegals in this nation. And I say kudos to that little boy for actually speaking the truth, and that we would be trying to subvert the truth and advocating for more crime. It doesn't matter who stops it, just stop the crime.
I think you're conflating multiple issues here. Again, crime is an issue in Memphis. We're not saying illegals are actually impacting or having an impact, and that is why crime is taking place in Memphis. In fact, that is not why crime is taking place in Memphis. However, there are tools that can be used to actually ensure that this is no longer a problem. And more importantly, National Guard are not there to actually stamp out the endemic of corruption that is also leading to the crime. It's great that this little boy can actually go out and play, but can he continue to do that over time?
Delicia, come in.
I don't, and pardon me for interjecting, but I don't want to, it's been a lot of fear-mongering, because when you think about the National Guard, it's not like they're walking the streets just all crazy with their military uniforms on. You do have the other agencies that are out here, as far as, the FBI, they've been assisting with, more police, more on the boots on the ground with the policing. And it hasn't been what people has thought it was. I was recently pulled over in a traffic stop by the FBI, and it was fine. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. The traffic stop wasn't bad. And pretty much mostly that's what it's been here in the city. It's been mostly just traffic stops. No one has been killed by the National Guard. They aren't coming into people's homes and busting down people's doors. Well, at least the ones that don't have warrants, by the way. But they are handling business. They're getting people off of the streets. And I'm not the only person here in the city that feels safer. We absolutely feel safe here in the city.
It's remarkable. I'm hearing people saying the same things about Washington. I've only been here 6 weeks or so. But are you feeling it in Washington as well, Hillary?
Oh, absolutely. The difference of coming down here is actually tremendous. You can also, walking down the streets, you can just sense it and you can feel it. I think it's amazing. You can also ask the restaurant owners the amount of people that have come back and that want to eat outside, whereas before people actually were hesitant to eat outside, of course, because of the crime. So I think you're seeing it in numbers. It's not just opinions.
Eric, isn't it just the case of it doesn't matter how it gets done? We don't have the time to train people up and bring in more police. Just fix it. That's what President Trump is so good at, is just getting stuff done.
No, it does matter how you get it done. And that's why you saw tens of thousands of people all across this country today protesting No Kings, because the president is using the National Guard as his private police. And we need to have police officers who are controlled and who listen to the state and their local leaders, and not the president of the United States picking and choosing where he is going to send his private police to actually go after his political enemies. That is a problem, and that is the slippery slope that we're seeing play out.
Delicia, does it matter to you that whether Donald Trump is playing politics or whether he's sending in his private police force, as long as you and your little boy are safer?
When it comes down to crime, it shouldn't be politics at all. Everybody should be safe, no matter where you are, no matter the neighborhood. It shouldn't be politics at all. Memphis is a democratic city. I've been in Memphis most of my entire life. I've leaned on the politicians here to get things done, and unfortunately, those things have not been done. Just a few years ago, the federal government had given Memphis over $1 million in resources, and those resources was not applied to those things that were needed here in the city. So I feel like the government at this point, they're doing what they have to do to protect the American citizens. Again, we've leaned on them for so long to be able to take care of these things. Again, from my experience, I have not seen the National Guard do anything that's been fatal or to make me scared or to make me fearful. I have been comfortable. I've been feeling safer since they've been here, and so have my children.
And Delicia, you have lost your job. You've had to now start a crowdfunder now so that you can feed your beautiful little boy. Can you give us the details of that? Because I'm sure there'll be people watching this going, I'm happy to help. I'll throw something in the pot tonight.
It's appreciated. So yes, I do currently have a GoFundMe. The link, you can find that on my profile on TikTok. You know, we're here, and we're just, you know, we're grateful for whatever. You know, at the end of the day, regardless politics, we have God. We are very strong faith believers, and we know that we'll get past this at the end of the day. It was such a surprise. I didn't expect for our lives to change within a week, but it has. I didn't expect for the career that I love so much for me to not be doing that anymore. But I do believe in the future, and I do believe bigger things will be on the horizon. I have faith in that.
Well, I saw your post and I thought, we have to get this woman on, because I can hard relate. I have never been in a city where I see so much law enforcement, and as a woman on my own walking around all the time, it is incredibly reassuring. Thank you so much for joining us, Delicia Ballinger there, and we wish you all the best. Thank you so much. Hillary Fordwich, talking of praise, I'm glad you're sitting down. So President Donald Trump has just put out a Truth Social post about you. He said, I've just watched Hillary Fordwich. She was fantastic, really gets it. President DJT.
Right. No, I mean, I really appreciate the fact that he likes the support, but it's not so much that I was talking to support him. I was talking about the facts of the effectiveness of his policies. And that, to me, is what's really important. It's that we're safer. I actually, in my entire lifetime, can't remember anybody who got so much done in such a short period of time, whether it's the peace deals, whether it's getting, and also he does them on weekends. And I just said a lot about that.
And frankly, I'd quite like him to work a little less hard, because it's exhausting for all of us who are chasing around trying to keep up with all the stories. But still to come this evening, if you are watching, Mr. President, hello, thank you for tuning in. Still ahead on The Late Show Live, we will bring you to front pages, and the Telegraph leads with Andrew sought to dig up dirt on Giuffre. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure now starting to dominate our weather pattern. Outbreaks of rain pushing north and eastward, some pretty brisk winds as well, but still on the mild side for the time of year. Wet start across western parts this morning. Heavy rain across Northern Ireland. A warning in force here for some localised flooding as we head through the morning. The rain slowly pushing north and eastwards through the day. So some eastern areas having a dry morning, but the rain reaching here by the afternoon. At the same time, sunny spells starting to follow in across some western parts. A pretty blustery day, gales around some western coasts, but mild with the winds coming in from the south. Temperatures around 13 to 15 Celsius. Into the evening time, the rain continues to push north and eastward, so a wet end to the day across much of Scotland. After a dry period across Aberdeenshire, the rain soon moving in here. Pretty windy too. Temperatures around 11 to 13 Celsius. But some sunshine moving in after a wet morning, early afternoon across Northern Ireland here. Some scattered showers for Wales and the West Country, but wet across the Midlands, eastwards into East Anglia, the London area, seeing some outbreaks of rain in places too. And then through the early hours, the rain pushes out into the North Sea, and then the low pressure itself starts to move in closer. So we see bands of heavy showers pushing in across the west, some rumbles of thunder possible during the early hours. But it will keep temperatures up, a lot of cloud around, some strong winds developing, particularly in the southwest, the temperatures for most staying in double figures. So Monday, dominated by low pressure, we'll see outbreaks of heavy showery rain pushing north and eastwards, particularly across England and Wales. Best of the drier, sunnier weather across central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, but rain still affecting Orkney and Shetland, only slowly clearing here. Blustery winds, particularly along the south coast, some gales possible, and temperatures generally around 14 to 15 Celsius. See you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a Saturday night. We thought we'd play you a little bit of music. Two princes there from Spin Doctors. Don't know about two princes. There's certainly one prince in desperate need of a spin doctor tonight, if you believe the following front pages. The Mirror is leading on Virginia's revenge on Andrew. And also Gaza, Paul Gascoigne, talking about the fact that doctors had to bring him back from the dead. The Sunday Express, they're leading on thousands of perverts to be freed from jail early. Not mincing their language there, are they? The New York Times, America is repatriating survivors of its strike on suspected drug vessel. So 2 men rescued by the US military after its attack on a boat in the Caribbean Sea were being sent to their home countries of Colombia and Ecuador, President Trump has said. This is a big story here. We might look into this in a minute. Washington Post, large crowds gather across the country for No Kings protests, as Trump crowds are gathering at some 2,600 locations for a new round of protests against President Trump amid tensions over the shutdown, the government shutdown, immigration crackdowns and the military deployments in cities. Let me know your thoughts this evening, gbnews.com/your say. Let's speak now to London and talk to former Conservative advisor, a very familiar face on GB News, Charlie Rowley. Charlie, what's this headline about perverts from the Express? Presumably they mean people who've been put away for sex offences are going to be released early?
That's exactly it, Bev. Another round, potentially, of early releases of prisoners from our jails, where people who shouldn't be anywhere near getting out early could be, because of the overcrowding of prisons, because of the backlog that we continue to have in our court service, where people are waiting years and years to even get their justice. If they want a trial to be heard, then obviously people are convicted. And we've seen it before. We saw people that were released only a few months ago. One of the first things this Labour government did here back in the UK was released thousands of prisoners early, who also went on to commit crimes and ended up right back inside. So it's another headache for the government, where they just don't seem to be able to do things that are actually, you know, the common sense approach, which is actually maybe find alternative accommodation. Or, you know, they seem to find accommodation for people who've come over illegally. Why can't they find alternative accommodation for prisoners?
That's a very good point. Apparently it's about 2,000 paedophiles are going to be let out of prison early every year under Labour's controversial sentencing reform. So child sex abusers locked up for some of the worst possible offences, is the quote from the paper, could be let out after spending just a third of their jail time behind bars. That's according to research seen by the Sunday Express. I might bring my panel in on this. I can hear Hillary exasperated beside me. Charlie's right there. One of the most memorable images, not long after Starmer won the election, was criminals shaking champagne outside of prisons because they had been let out early, and it was a PR disaster. It's been downhill ever since that moment. But this is just another awful story about how we're handling crime in our country.
No, it actually does. And when I still remember those images of them with the champagne. What I would say is, you know, my exasperation was, you know, as a mother of a daughter, and I know you are too, even if one doesn't have children, like, who would actually say, yes, I think a paedophile should be let out on the street, or anybody that's ever abused a child? I just can't imagine anybody's politics that would say, yes, please, I want not only more crime, but I want them to be on the streets. And what's really sad is that the jails are full, not just from them, but from people that have come in illegally. And I always say the same thing. Imagine when the Nazis were trying to invade, and imagine all those young men that died defending our shores, British shores. Could you imagine saying, oh, no, come on in, and we're going to give you free housing, we're going to give you free food, we're going to give you a mobile phone. Oh, and you know what, well, any of you that do anything naughty, we'll empty out the paedophiles and give you some space there.
Eric, it's another one of those stories that draws such a stark distinction between America and the UK. We seem to be getting soft on crime at the very moment that this country is getting very tough on crime.
Well, we are getting tough on something, but I still think it's more political. But I think in this country, those who do and act on a crime certainly get rewarded. And it's always been an issue that people do inherently care about, and it moves people, and quite frankly it will move people from the left to the right to the left, because at the end of the day people want to feel safe. They want to be able to walk the streets. They want to know that their children can go outside. They want to know that there is a safe space for their families. Now, there's nothing more important than being able to protect your family and live in safe communities. And so I think this resonates very much with people on both sides of the pond.
I want to go to this New York Times story. Now, Charlie, you are forgiven if you aren't an expert on the repatriation of survivors from suspected drug vessels in the Caribbean, but let's just have a look at this, because this is Donald Trump, as the protesters would say, Eric, acting like a king and bypassing legislation or bypassing rules. Because just remind our viewers, and just let Charlie know as well, what is he doing here with suspected drug vessels?
Well, the president has already declared war on drug trafficking and has called cartels basically narco terrorists. And so the Pentagon is treating them as such, very much like how during post 9/11 we treated the Taliban. And you have heard Kash Patel actually say that in hearings, Kash Patel being the FBI director here. And so already we have seen the U.S. military fire missiles on suspected drug traffickers in international waters, and I think that's important. And so far we know at least 27 people have been killed in these attacks. And the reason for these attacks is the president has been saying that these are boats that are shipping drugs into the United States, that they're coming from Trinidad Aragua, a suspected drug cartel or gang from Venezuela, that the president accuses Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of actually leading this organization. There's a $50 million bounty on the head of the president of Venezuela as a result of this. And of course, his argument is that the United States is fomenting regime change, which is why you're seeing this massive buildup in Venezuela. But also, U.S. ally Colombia has also been pushing back on these claims by the United States, and specifically President Donald Trump. In fact, he spoke about this at the most recent UN General Assembly, where the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, actually had his visa to enter the country revoked. So now you have a once major ally of the United States who now can no longer actually come into the United States as a result of these attacks that are taking place. So with all of that as the backdrop, now you have these 2 survivors from one of these attacks who the president has accused of being terrorists, and now we're told they're being repatriated back to their countries. And so that begs the question, if these are in fact terrorists, why are they not being held in a black site? Why are they not being held at Guantanamo Bay? Why are they not being tried for their alleged crimes? Why are you sending them back to their homes as innocent individuals when you told us that these were suspected narco-terrorists?
Certainly saves money if you don't have to put them on trial for the American taxpayers. Just send them back.
Oh, Charlie, have you seen these pictures of these Venezuelan boats being blown out of the water? Trump stands by it. His Secretary of War, even Pete Hegseth, they stand by it. They say we're saving the American people.
Definitely, and I think, look, this is where the US has a great advantage, if I'm not mistaken, over probably anyone else in the world, that it doesn't sign up to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and it doesn't adhere or have signed up to any sort of, waters policy, whereby you always hear about the UK and the French, who patrols which part of the waters here and who can look after these boats here or who can intercept who. The US doesn't have any of that problem, because if it's under a threat, it will take that threat out, and that is what a lot of people want to see. And it is the case that there is a drugs epidemic, I'd call it, particularly from Venezuela into the US, because of the way in which Venezuela has been run into the ground by Maduro, which is why, notwithstanding President Donald Trump, I think, being rightly nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize next year, the reason why I think it was absolutely fundamentally right that it did go to Marina Cachorro, I've forgotten her second name, but the Venezuelan opposition leader, is because Venezuela has been running to the ground so much because of the dictatorship of Maduro. That's why there is this drug problem. That's why people turn to crime, and that's why it impacts on America. So it's absolutely right that Trump takes out these gangs where he can, but also can hopefully restore Venezuela to its rightful glory, which is why the Venezuelan opposition leader praised Trump for all the support that he was giving her, even though she won the Nobel Peace Prize.
Let's talk about electric vehicles. So our Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, is now eyeing a shake-up, believe it or not. It's just shocking, isn't it, for electric vehicle drivers. So now she's saying that they should also pay their fair share in a potential budget revenue raiser, because of course we were all told, weren't we, Charlie, if you have electric cars you won't pay road tax, you barely pay for your parking, it's going to be really cheap, and then everyone bought them, and now she's saying, well, they have to pay their fair share in the budget as well. It makes your ears ring with how infuriating it is. Treasury officials are considering levies based on car weight or a pay-per-mile system. Honestly, these conspiracy theories keep coming true, don't they? Well, currently 1.3 million EV drivers are paying minimal road tax compared to petrol and diesel drivers, and it aims this move to address the £30 billion shortfall in public finances. Hillary, it's not even going to make a dent in the massive amounts, the trillions that we owe in interest alone on the national debt. It's just punishing motorists.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, she's desperate. Reeves is desperate to find money from somewhere, so she's got to do this. That's where that comes from. But also with regard to the weight, you do know all these EVs are actually destroying roads. When I was in the UK just recently, I have never seen such potholes and the disastrous situation of the roads. And with regard to how they are in America in terms of popularity, I can give you the data on this. The rental car companies cannot rent them, so they've actually had to backtrack now and have had to buy regular petrol cars, called gas in America, excuse me, and then all of the major car manufacturers, Stellantis, Ford, all the rest of them, they have actually cut back on their and they've cut back on their production because they are not able to sell them. And then last but not least, with regard to the charging stations, they still haven't built out the charging stations across the US. I'll just give you one concrete fact that I experienced. Went with somebody to New York in their electric vehicle. It's usually a 4-hour trip. Guess what? You had to make a 20-minute detour off I-95 to go and find the EV station. There aren't any bathrooms there, no toilets. There was nothing to clean the windshield. You had to wait for 45 minutes to get your car charged, and then you had to wait another 40 minutes for it to charge. So you added 2 hours to the journey.
Well, in the UK, what we're finding is that the electric charging points are being vandalised because people are stealing the copper. That's right, Eric. People are so poor in the UK, and they're so there's so many blooming criminals that they're taking these charging points to pieces to steal copper wire out of it. Is there a story that sums up how desperately sad the UK is at the moment? I don't know what that is. Eric, do you drive an electric car? Are you a fan of them?
Oh, no, I drive a gas guzzler. I drive a Jeep that only gets 13 miles to the gallon. Here in the United States, we had President Biden, who, of course, issued these tax credits for those who had electric vehicles. Donald Trump came into office and actually removed those credits. That's one of the reasons why we saw the huge fallout between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, because, of course, the thought was that was going to be very detrimental to the Tesla business. But what you see in this country is many people actually favor electric vehicles, and that was a direction that many companies were going as a result of what we have been seeing both from President Obama and from President Biden. And it was why we saw companies like Ford Motor invest over $30 billion in electric vehicles, as well as General Motors. But now that's all come to a crashing halt.
Charlie, how do you think it's going to go down with the British people who've invested in electric cars? They're not paying, they've been paying, like we say, very low road tax, very low charging. Now I'd just be infuriated if I'd invested in a Tesla.
Bev, you're absolutely right. It's going to go down terribly here in the UK because these people feel as though that they've done the right thing because they've been encouraged by government to do it, to move to a greener car, and they've been told that actually in the long term it might be cheaper because you'll get all those discounts that you just talked about. But it's now going to cost them even more. And where does it stop? You know, people that have invested in, I don't know, more insulation, in heat pumps, in solar energy on their roofs, all of that is going to cost them probably more in the long run.
Yeah, it's a massive con. Right, let's move on. I'm dying to do this story. So we've been showing you these pictures. A London man has taken, well, actually, I think he's Brazilian. In London, he's taken crime into his own hands. He's so sick of seeing pickpockets on the streets of London that he's been spraying them with red paint. Have a look.
Buenas! Good morning! Attention, guys, pickpockets. You know what's gonna happen, right? No, not running, no running, no running. Attention, guys, pickpockets inside of the store.
Now, we shouldn't have to do that, Eric Ham. That is what people in the UK have to do because the police don't do anything about pickpockets. We need the National Guard. What do you make of it?
I think that guy's a national hero. He should be given a medal if he's going after people that don't know that they're pickpocketed, and also he's like tagging them with a scarlet letter. So I would say good for him.
It's very difficult, Charlie, to have a low opinion of this. I think he's really brave. I mean, any of these people could have knives on them, could attack him back. It's great.
And that's the point. I mean, look, you know, as long as you get the right person and don't end up sort of mistaken identity, I mean, that would obviously be a bit of a backward step. But you're absolutely right. You know, the amount of shoplifting you see, you know, I want to see, if you're able enough, frankly, if you're, you know, built very well, you might be an ex-rugby player, an ex-American football player, or my current one, you know, and if you see some shoplifting, or if you see somebody doing something that, you know, where the security guards can't do it, or shopkeepers certainly can't do it themselves, we should be intervening now. I think that's just where we are as a nation. I never thought we'd be at that mark, but it seems to me we are. If that's going to teach people a lesson and going to stop other people committing these crimes, which do cost and which do affect people's lives, then I think, you know, hats off to anyone that can do it.
Yeah, go on, Hillary.
No, years ago there was a garbage men strike, rubbish bin in England, but a garbage men strike in LA, and one clever person had a convertible, and every day he would load a cardboard box with all his rubbish, put it in there, and put a little bit of birthday paper, wrapping paper on top, and put it in the seat, and someone would steal it every day.
Oh, you mean he made it look like a parcel and somebody would steal it from his
every day, a little bit of wrapping paper on the top, and it was stolen every day.
Oh, that's genius, actually.
Fabulous.
Yeah, we've had something similar in the UK. People putting fridges outside. The council wouldn't take them, but if you sprayed a red cross, like a St George's flag, the council would come and take it away because you can't display patriotism like that.
Cross of St George.
It is. But that Brazilian guy, Charlie, spraying people like that, it just made me also think maybe this is what we should give security guards. We haven't got guns in the UK, and we shouldn't have guns, I don't think. Let's not go there. You know, we don't have pepper spray, mace, or anything in the same way. I think it's illegal to carry that as well. So why don't we just give security guards and all these scallies that come in their very expensive black puffer jackets, just spray them with paint? I think it's a fantastic idea. Brilliant. It would work, wouldn't it, Charlie?
Yeah. I think, anything that can be done to deter these people or to, send a message that you're not welcome here and that what you're doing is absolutely, outrageous. But, I mean, you've just got to feel for those people that have those jobs, whether you're a shopkeeper, whether you're a security guard, because you never know, as you said before, whether someone's coming in with a knife or something more dangerous than a bit of spray paint. So luckily this guy's on a bike, so he can cycle off quickly after spraying them down. But you're right, we've got to do something, and we've got to empower the people that should feel empowered to go and tackle people who are doing all these kinds of crazy crimes, shoplifting and stealing your mobile phone on a street, just walking down Oxford Street, London's iconic shopping district, and people are getting mugged left, right and centre. Something's got to be done to stop them.
And it's something that's got to be done, and it is this what might be considered to be low-level crime. We have a problem in the UK, Eric, with people on these electric bikes. You've got them here, I know, in DC, just coming along, stealing mobile phones out of people's hands. There was a big mobile phone ring, wasn't there, recently, Charlie, that was smashed, and they were stealing them, bizarrely, and sending them to China, which seems counterintuitive, because you would think that China would have enough of their own mobile phones. They seem to make most of them, but they were sending them there because they were using them for parts and stuff. But anyway, Charlie Rowley, thank you so much for staying up and joining me this evening. I hope you guys have enjoyed it here in the studio as well, Hillary.
Absolutely, lovely. Thank you for having me.
And a little shout out from President Trump, that's never a bad thing. And Eric Ham, you need to go home and think about how fabulous the National Guard is. Yes. For that little boy who's sleeping soundly in his bed tonight, and you wished him to feel more at risk.
Well, I don't have any children, but...
There you go.
Well. Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Low pressure now starting to dominate our weather pattern. Outbreaks of rain pushing north and eastward, some pretty brisk winds as well, but still on the mild side for the time of year. Wet start across western parts this morning. Heavy rain across Northern Ireland. A warning in force here for some localised flooding as we head through the morning. The rain slowly pushing north and eastwards through the day. So some eastern areas having a dry morning, but the rain reaching here by the afternoon. At the same time, sunny spells starting to follow in across some western parts. A pretty blustery day, gales around some western coasts, but mild with the winds coming in from the south. Temperatures around 13 to 15 Celsius. Into the evening time, the rain continues to push north and eastward, so a wet end to the day across much of Scotland. After a dry period across Aberdeenshire, the rain soon moving in here. Pretty windy too. Temperatures around 11 to 13 Celsius. But some sunshine moving in after a wet morning. Early afternoon across Northern Ireland here. Some scattered showers for Wales and the West Country, but wet across the Midlands. Eastwards into East Anglia, the London area, seeing some outbreaks of rain in places too. And then through the early hours, the rain pushes out into the North Sea, and then the low pressure itself starts to move in closer. So we see bands of heavy showers pushing in across the west, some rumbles of thunder possible during the early hours. But it will keep temperatures up, a lot of cloud around, some strong winds developing, particularly in the southwest, the temperatures for most staying in double figures. So Monday, dominated by low pressure, we'll see outbreaks of heavy showery rain pushing north and eastwards, particularly across England and Wales. Best of the drier, sunnier weather across central and northern parts of mainland Scotland, but rain still affecting Orkney and Shetland, only slowly clearing here. Blustery winds, particularly along the south coast, some gales possible, and temperatures generally around 14 to 15 Celsius. See you soon.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.